Okay, so how does all this figure into with this coronavirus now coming in and sort of shutting down aspects of the global economy and crashing the stock market? And
Sure. So the coronavirus is just the trigger for this recession that we're falling into now and that might get much, much worse. It simply pulled back the veils of the global economy and shown how incredibly, number one, how incredibly interdependent all countries and all peoples and all regions are to each other through the globalized economy. So the coronavirus stopped momentarily the supply chains. All of these supplies go from China all the way to the rest of the world, and so it starts undermining the whole the whole global economy. But the other thing about the coronavirus is that we had analyzed earlier the structural crisis of overaccumulation. And so how has the system continued to function from 2008, even before then, right up until 2020? It's had a number of mechanisms to, if you want, push forward into the future, the day of reckoning, the day when this whole thing collapses. One of those mechanisms has been, we already discussed, military spending and conflicts and war. That means the capital keeps on accumulating even when masses of people cannot consume. I can't go out and buy a missile, but Raytheon drops a missile in Syria, and then the US government pays it for another missile. So we have militarized accumulation, right, to offset the crisis, the collapse of this system. Another mechanism that we have is that transnational corporations and their political representatives continue to plunder the state. So increasingly, the public finance system in the United States goes to give money to the wealthy and take it away from the poor, such as regressive taxation. But the third big mechanism, and this is going to touch into the coronavirus, the third big mechanism that's kept this economy going rather than collapsing all of these years is financial speculation. And to give those listening to this documentary an idea, the whole global economy produces $75 trillion a year in goods and services. The shirt I'm wearing, the cars that we drive, the food that we eat, the houses that are built, right, the schools that we go to, all of that is $75 trillion a year, the whole world. Now, financial speculation just in derivatives. Derivative means that's already a speculative transaction. A derivative is something speculative, is $1.2 quadrillion. So we have the real economy of goods and services that we consume over here, and we have over 1.75 trillion, over 10, 11, 12 times bigger is just financial speculation, not representing anything but a global casino. And so that financial speculation has also prevented the global economy from collapsing. Militarized accumulation, right? Wars, financial speculation, plundering state finance. But so that structural crisis is deepening of overaccumulation. The coronavirus merely is the trigger. It's merely the final trigger. Just like in 2008, the collapse, the final trigger was the subprime mortgage crisis. But that was the trigger then. So all you need is something to come along and trigger it. And so the coronavirus is showing just how incredibly fragile and crisis-ridden is global capitalism and this global economy.
Wow. So we need to be activated and continue to organize.
Well, absolutely. That's our only salvation. But we also need to, and I've been saying this for many years now, and not just myself, because you see in upsurge, you see people taking the streets in Lebanon, you see it in Iraq, you see it in China, you see it throughout Latin America, all over the world. People are here in the United States, people are rising up in mass social movements and movements that are protesting governments and becoming more and more conscious that the problem is the system itself. But we need two things for these movements to really take off. One, they need to be transnationally coordinated, because any single one country and movements there cannot change the system because the system is global. And so we don't have those mechanisms for transnational coordination. For instance, there's a mass uprising in Lebanon. How can we connect that to uprisings elsewhere? How can these different movements, in different countries connect to some transnational project? And that's the second thing we need. We need a vision and a project for the future that we all unite around. So for instance, you have the Bernie Sanders basic program in the United States, but we need a global basic program. So they rise up in Lebanon, given the specific circumstances of that country, but that uprising is linked to some transnational project of change. Like a 10-point program of change. The banks should be nationalized all over. International financial transactions should be taxed. That used to be called the Tobin tax idea. That there's you know, that you know, a program around
Getting
which
money
mass,
out of politics.
well,
in the
getting
United
money
States.
out of politics, a reversal of the privatization of healthcare and educational systems, some 10-point program that all these mass social movements around the world can agree upon and struggle together around. I think those are two things that are critically important.
Okay.